At 16, my dad disowned me over my brother's lie, calling me a disgrace. Just 14 days later, the truth came out, and his pride collapsed when he realized he threw away his own child over a lie. 2 weeks later, his pride shattered when he found out the truth. I was 16 when I learned how disposable I was in my own family. My name is Ethan, and I used to believe that I knew what it meant to be a family member. You grow up believing you can trust those around you, your mother, father, and siblings. Even if things weren't always perfect, blood meant something. That family was there for you even when the rest of the world was not. I wasn't completely naive, but I was unprepared for what happened that night and what followed. From the outside, we most likely appeared to be a typical family. Dad was a towering figure, loud, opinionated, and rather old school. He believed in tough love, though the love part was often optional. Mom was quieter, softer, and the one who kept everything together. She was constantly there to act as a barrier between Dad and the kids. My older brother Alex was 18 and could play everyone like a game of chess. And then there was me, 16 years old and rather average in most regards. I did not cause any trouble. I kept to myself and tried really hard to remain out of the crossfire, but it didn't stop me from being the ideal scapegoat. Alex and I were close when we were kids. We battled like any other siblings, but we also built forts in the backyard, stayed up late chatting about video games, and even teamed up when our parents argued. However, around the time Alex reached adolescence and learned he could control people, things changed. He realized he could get away with almost anything, as long as he told the appropriate narrative. And Dad, God, he ate it up. Alex could lie through his teeth and yet get a pat on the back, whereas I was interrogated for things I hadn't done. It started little. There's a damaged lamp here and a lost charger there. Alex would say, Ethan did it. That was it. No questioning, no opportunity to clarify. I'd get grounded or chastised, and Alex would smirk when no one was looking. I told Mom a few times, hoping she'd see through it, but all she did was sigh and encourage me to be the larger person. She'd argue that despite his age, he's still figuring things out. Simply ignore him, Ethan. It's not worth fighting. But it was. It was worth the fight. I just wasn't sure how to win. Things came to a climax in early October, just as the weather began to shift. That week had been tense. Dad was concerned about job. Alex was acting strangely, and Mom had been staying late at work. I could feel something building, like a storm that you can't see but know is there. Then Friday happened. I arrived home from school as usual, dropped my bag, grabbed a snack, and proceeded to my room to play some guitar. I was learning this song that I'd been infatuated with for weeks, and for once I felt tranquil and peaceful, as if the weekend would be quiet. I was halfway through the chorus when I heard Dad call out my name from downstairs, not just calling and yelling, the kind of tone that makes your stomach turn instantly. Ethan, get down here quickly. I froze. I had not done anything. I went through everything in my brain. Have I forgotten to do the dishes? Was there a chore I overlooked? I laid the instrument down carefully and walked downstairs, my pulse pounding in my chest. Dad was standing in the living room, arms crossed, face flushed. Alex was seated on the couch, staring at the floor, performing the innocent act that he had mastered over the years. There was a shattered picture frame on the coffee table. A portrait of our family was now splintered across the glass, almost like a metaphor. You think I am stupid, Dad snapped the second I entered the room. Alex told me everything. You broke this and attempted to lie about it. Then you laughed in his face when he asked you to assist cleanup. My jaw fell. What? No, I do not. You dare to lie to me. He cut in with a booming voice. Alex noticed you throw your backpack at it when you got home. Then you walked away as if it were nothing. I gazed at Alex with wide eyes. That is not true. I didn't even enter the living room. I headed directly upstairs. Alex did not glance at me, didn't say anything. He just kept staring at the floor and biting his lip as if he were the victim. I returned my attention to my father, attempting to remain calm. I swear I did not do it. Of course you did, he exclaimed. You're usually irresponsible and looking for attention. Do you believe this is a joke, breaking things and lying about them? I did not. Enough. Don't anticipate to leave your room for the remainder of the weekend. But I responded, go. I resisted the temptation to dispute further. I knew from previous experience that nothing I said would matter. Dad made up his decision, and that was that. I took one more look at Alex before turning back. His face was expressionless, but I noticed the faintest twitch of a smile as I walked away. That night I sat on my bed in silence. No music, no diversions, just me and the mounting suspicion that something was wrong. Really broken. And not only the photo frame. I kept wondering why Alex would do that. What did he gain from it? Did he really love watching me get punished? I didn't get much sleep. The weekend only got worse. Every time I stepped downstairs, I was confronted with chilly stares and sharp comments. Alex walked around like a golden child offering to help with supper and take out the garbage as if he were a saint. And Dad ate it up. I felt myself retreating inside my own home as if I no longer belonged. It wasn't until Monday morning that I discovered what had transpired. I was getting my backpack from the hallway when I heard Alex in the kitchen talking on the phone. "Nah, it was easy," he responded, chuckling quietly. "I just told him that Ethan did it. He flipped out like usual. My heart has stopped." I moved closer, scarcely breathing. "Yes, bro." He did not even question it. Grounded him for the entire weekend. I didn't even have to act upset. Worked perfectly. I stepped through the doorway. Alex jumped the phone, dropping slightly from his ear. His eyes met me, and for a brief moment we just stared at each other. No words, no justifications. Then he smiled and shrugged. "Oops." I'm not sure what came over me, but I just turned around and left. I did not say anything to him. Did not yell, hit a wall, or cry. I just stepped out the front door and continued walking. I had no idea where I was heading, and I didn't care. My chest felt hollow, my throat felt tight. I did not want to stay in that house for another second. It was pouring cold and consistent. The kind of rain that soaks into your clothing and chills you to the bone. I did not carry a jacket. I did not even grab my phone. I was 3 blocks away when I heard my name. Bryant. I turned to see Dad standing behind an umbrella, his face twisted in rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I did not respond. "You think you can just storm off like some dramatic little brat? Get back to the house." "No," I murmured, barely above a whisper. "What did you say?" I stared at him in the eyes. "I'm not going back." He looked at me as if I had grown a second head. Then his voice changed to a deep growl. "You are not welcome in this house if you behave like this." I did not fight back. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked. I did not see where he went. I just continued walking. 3 weeks later, I returned. Not because I forgave anyone, but because I had little option. I had been living with my friend Tyler's family, sleeping on a pull-out couch in their basement. His folks were nice, but I knew I couldn't stay forever. I needed clothes. I needed my school books. I'm not sure what I needed. Maybe closure. When I walked through the door, nothing had changed. Alex sat on the couch eating chips and playing video games. Dad was in the kitchen joking with some of his auto shop coworkers. They were boisterous, making jokes and sharing stories. Then I heard it. "Yeah, I kicked him out in the rain," Dad said, chuckling. "Little punk thought he could defy me. Let him walk. Maybe that taught him something." The guys laughed. I stood motionless in the hallway, each word soaking in like a stone. And then I saw her. Mom. She was standing right behind Dad, holding a grocery bag in one hand. I'll never forget the look on her face. She had heard every word. And for the first time in a long time, I noticed something different in her gaze. Something sharp and frigid. And I knew things were going to change. I did not move. I could not. My feet were stuck to the floor as I saw Mom look at Dad as if she had never seen him before. She said nothing at first. She merely stood there, her keys still in hand, and the grocery bag slipping from her fingers. I recall seeing an apple roll out and strike the floor. Nobody noticed. Not Dad, Alex, or the coworkers who were still laughing. But I did, and I felt something irreparable had broken open. Mom carefully laid the rest of the bag down and turned around. She passed past me, without saying anything, yet our gazes briefly connected. I expected disappointment or perhaps guilt. She usually gave me this look when Dad was being tough. But this time, things were different. It was fire. I did not see what happened next. At least not right now. I grabbed a hoodie off the stairs and departed. I'm not sure where I was headed. I ended up sitting behind the corner store a few blocks away, watching the rain fall into puddles for what felt like hours. My phone died. I was wet through again, but I felt still for the first time in weeks. I didn't feel anxious, hurt, or confused. I was angry. Not the kind of rage that dissipates quickly, but the kind that seeps into your bones, slow, steady, and concentrated. When I returned home later that night, something had changed in the air. The living room was quiet. The guests were gone. Alex's game console had been unplugged, and Mom was seated at the kitchen table sipping tea as if she hadn't just witnessed her husband laughing about abandoning his child in the pouring rain. "Come sit," she said, not looking up. I paused. "Is Dad?" "He's in the garage." "Don't worry, I was sitting nearby. The tea in front of me was still heating." "You didn't tell me," she said. "You didn't say what he said to you that night." "I assumed you already knew." "I didn't," she replied gently. "Alex told me you stormed out after breaking something and screaming at Dad." I stared down, my jaw clenched. "Of course he did. But then I heard what your father said today," she remarked, her voice softening slightly, and suddenly a lot of things made sense. We sat quietly. I'm sorry, she added, making me flinch. Not because of the apology, but because it seemed genuine, too real, like if she had finally witnessed what I had been quietly going through. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. But that moment should have marked the beginning of things becoming better. It wasn't because that's when Alex knew he was losing control, which he didn't take well. The following few weeks were a slow, stifling descent. Mom began to examine things more, asking Alex for his and my perspectives, checking in with me privately and giving me the benefit of the doubt in ways I was not used to. At first, it seemed like I was finally being seen, but it also created a bullseye on my back. Alex disliked the spotlight being drawn away from him. He was used to being the golden child, the one who could never go wrong. The favorite. The future mom stopped relying on his every word. She started spending more time with me, asking about school, monitoring my guitar practice, and making sure I ate dinner before leaving for the night. Alex noticed he began small-scale sabotage. My phone charger would disappear from my room. My assignment mysteriously disappeared. One day, I discovered my socks soaking wet in the bathroom sink. I didn't have proof, but I was certain it was him. His smug little sneer as I came downstairs hunting for my belongings told me everything. I tried to ignore it. I told myself he'd become bored eventually, but Alex wasn't wired that way. If he couldn't be loved, he'd settle with being feared. When he couldn't manage the narrative, he'd burn it down. I got home from school one night to find Dad pacing in the living room, his eyes wild. Alex sat on the stairs, head lowered like a sorrowful little martyr. "Where is it?" Dad asked the moment he spotted me. "Where's what?" "You know exactly what." "I really don't." $250 from my top drawer, he replied. "Gone." My gut plummeted. Not because I took it, but because I saw where this was headed. "I didn't take anything," I said. "Why would I even? Alex saw you going into our room yesterday. I was looking for Mom. Don't lie to me." I looked at Alex, who seemed hurt. I saw him go in after school. I didn't think anything of it until I overheard him on the phone bragging about having cash for a new amp. My lips were dry. "What? That's not. I'm done with the lies," Dad yelled. "I should have never let you back in this house. I didn't. You think I'm stupid? You think I wouldn't notice when money goes missing the same day you're bragging about gear?" "I never said that. Ask Tyler. Ask literally anyone. I haven't been saving for anything. I've been working at the corner store every weekend to pay for that amp. You can check with Mr. Hernandez." Dad scoffed. "Yeah, we'll see what your manager says." He stormed away. I stood there shivering, not in fear, but in wrath. And Alex? Alex simply smiled and walked by me as if nothing happened. That night, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, reflecting on all the times I let things go and didn't push back. Every lie Alex uttered, every punishment I received, and every time Dad blindly believed him taught me a valuable lesson. They wanted me to be silent. They needed me too. But I was not going to do it anymore. The next day at school, I saw the guidance counselor. I told her everything, not just about the money, but also about the months before it, the routine, the lies, and the care at home. She listened. She jotted things down. She nodded frequently, but I wasn't sure whether any of it meant anything. Nonetheless, it felt nice to speak it aloud. When I arrived home that afternoon, Dad was waiting for me with his arms crossed. Alex was already sitting on the couch eating chips as if nothing had occurred. "You told your school that we were abusing you," Dad yelled. I froze. "Your counselor called, said they're opening a case, said someone's coming to do a home visit." Alex smirked now. "Nice one. Ethan, very mature." Dad took a step closer. "You think this is a game, bringing strangers into our house? You want to humiliate your family? Fine, but you better pray they find something, because if they don't, you're out for good." I looked at Mom, who had just entered the room with laundry. Her eyes were large. "You threatened him?" she inquired. "He's trying to ruin us," Dad yelled. "He wants to tear this family apart because he's too lazy to take responsibility." "He's 16, she said. "You're a grown man. You don't get to threaten your child just because he finally spoke up." That silenced everyone, but not for long. 3 days later, the social worker arrived. She spoke to each of us separately, asking questions and taking notes. I told her everything again. She was patient, but her expression revealed nothing. I wasn't sure if she believed me. I had no idea what would happen, but Alex did, and he panicked. The following morning, I awoke to commotion. Mom was yelling. Dad roared. Alex was crying. I came downstairs and noticed it. Mom is holding Alex's phone open to a group chat. There were screenshots, images, and texts from Alex's conversations with his friends, like the following. "Watch this. I'm going to get Ethan kicked out again, and my dad believes anything I say. Elmo, that is." There were also videos. One of them is pretending to cry after smashing a plate. Another of him ridiculing me after I was grounded. It was all there, everything. I remained there transfixed while Alex attempted to protect himself. It was just jokes. They're my friends. None of it's real. But Dad was not listening. Mom wasn't either. And for once, I didn't have to carry the stillness. I expected things to improve at this point, that Alex would face the consequences, that maybe, just maybe, I might be believed without having to bring the truth to light. So what happened next? That was worse than I could have anticipated, because instead of punishment, apologies, or justice, they made me the problem again. And what happened next, that was the breaking moment. It's strange how everyone says the truth will set you free, as if dragging it into the light causes everything wrong to instantly flip right. I believed that for a long time. I clung to the calm faith that if I waited long enough, remained patient, and kept my head down, the truth would ultimately fight for me. But it did not. Not at first. After the group conversation was uncovered, Mom discovered the text videos and other smug manipulation Alex had stored on his phone. I expected something, anything, to change. There was yelling, there was crying, threats were flung like knives across the living room. But in the end, nothing much changed. Not that it mattered, because I still ended up being blamed. It began with Dad. He didn't say anything at first, just glanced at Alex and then at me as if the weight of the truth was too much for him to confess he'd been wrong for years. Then he shook his head and said something that still bothers me. "You could have handled this privately." I blinked. "What? You didn't have to humiliate your brother like that. You went through his phone. You think that's okay? I didn't go through anything. Mom did. And what are you even talking about? He's the one who set me up for months, lied, got me kicked out. He said it himself. He did it all on purpose." Dad snapped. "He's a kid. He's still learning. You should have talked to me like a man instead of crying to your school." My heart sank. There it was, the wall. Even with all the evidence in front of him and Alex's own comments echoing throughout the home, Dad couldn't get past his pride. He did not want the truth. He desired control. And in his eyes, I'd broken the chain. Mom attempted to stick up for me. She defended me that morning and pushed Dad in ways I had never seen before, but it did not last. By dinner, she was silent and aloof. When I asked whether she was okay, she simply seemed exhausted. "I'm trying to keep this family together, Ethan," she said quietly. "You don't understand how hard that is." I did, but I also knew something else. It wasn't my duty to keep the pieces together anymore. After that day, things grew worse. Not louder, but quieter, which seemed crueler. Alex did not speak to me at all, just strolled past me as if I didn't exist. Dad scarcely acknowledged me. Mom spoke only as required. There were no more accusations or screaming battles, only silence, cold, harsh, resounding quiet. It felt as if I had died and no one had the decency to arrange a funeral. The house visit with the social worker ended with a shrug. She stated that there was insufficient proof of abuse to warrant a formal intervention. Unfortunately, emotional neglect was a hazy area. "Monitor the situation," she advised my counselor. "Let us know if anything escalates." As a result, I stopped expecting and asking for support. I reached rock bottom about a week later. It was Thursday. I'd stayed late after school to help the band teacher organize music stands, mainly to avoid coming home. When I eventually arrived, the front door was locked. There was no note, phone call, or anything. I knocked and Alex responded. He looked at me through the glass for a time before gently, methodically closing the door again. I waited on the porch for 20 minutes, expecting Mom would come unlock it, that it was simply a mistake, that someone had forgotten I didn't have a key. No one arrived. I eventually departed again. I returned to Tyler's apartment, soaking through and silent. His mother opened the door before I could knock. "Oh, honey," she replied sweetly. "Come in." They didn't ask for an explanation. Simply allow me to shower, dry my clothing, and prepare my dinner. Tyler and I remained up all night playing ancient video games and pretending everything was fine. But I couldn't pretend any longer. That night, I made a decision while staring up at the ceiling in their basement. I was not going back. Not this time. The next morning, I went to the school office and asked to speak with the guidance counselor. I told her everything again, but this time I requested options. Legal alternatives, housing emancipation, anything. "I'm tired," I said, "and I'm not safe there." "Not really." She stared at me for a while. Then she nodded. It did not happen overnight. But things started to happen. The school connected me to a youth outreach program. They scheduled an appointment with a social worker who specializes in at-risk teenagers. We met weekly. She listened. She truly listened. For the first time in my life, someone took my story seriously. She assisted me in applying for a student housing program for minors from insecure family circumstances. It was not easy. There were interviews, documentation, and home inspections. However, Tyler's parents backed me up. So did the band instructor. So did Mr. Hernandez from the corner grocery. People stepped up for me in ways I never expected. Eventually, I was placed in a group home 2 towns away. It was not glamorous. 4 kids per room, shared bathrooms, and daily chores. Yet it was safe. For the first time in months, I was able to breathe. I began rebuilding one component at a time. I landed a part-time work at a music store near the group home. Keith, the manager, loved my ability to tune guitars by ear. He let me help with repairs and paid me under the table until the paperwork was completed. I saved every cent. I enrolled in therapy through a youth program. I did not want to at first. I'd always dreaded talking about my emotions, but Carla, the therapist, had this way of making you feel like you weren't damaged, just rearranged. I told her everything, the falsehoods, the favoritism, the way I'd abandoned my own family, and she didn't try to fix me. She simply let me be. At school, things gradually improved. The news spread, but not in a harsh way. Several children began sitting with me during lunch. One of the seniors in band urged me to join his garage band. I said yes. We began practicing after school, jamming in his dad's shed. I hadn't realized how much I missed feeling like a part of something. I also began performing better in class. I'm not sure why exactly. Maybe because the chaos had subsided, or because for the first time I was doing it for myself. I even received a small award for a song I wrote and entered anonymously into a statewide music competition. It was a basic piece, just me and my guitar, but the lyrics were genuine and honest. The judges deemed it haunting. I didn't tell anyone it was about Alex or Dad or standing in the rain at 16 years old waiting for a door that never opened. The descent was gradual and painful, but the increase was mine. And somewhere in the midst of it all, I realized something significant. You do not need a broken family to be entire again. You simply need to quit waiting for them to heal you. I was now rebuilding brick by brick, step by step, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because as much as I wanted to move forward, there was a part of me that craved something more. Closure. Not the type that comes with forgiveness, but the sort you take back with your own hands. And when the occasion arose, I did not hesitate. It's strange how rage can settle on you like embers from a wildfire. Quiet, nearly unnoticeable, but always warm and searing. For months, I had buried the worst of it beneath the minor successes. My employment at the music shop, band practice, and scholarship. Everyone said I was doing well. My school counselor said I was resilient. Carla claimed I was mending, and in some ways I was, but there was still a part of me, this obstinate, pulsing agony that hadn't gone away, that remembered the cold rain on my hoodie. Alex smirked through the glass. My father's voice was like a door slamming shut. You're not welcome in this house. That statement played on repeat several nights. I wasn't preoccupied with revenge as I lay in bed at the group home staring at the ceiling. Not precisely. I didn't want any violence or a dramatic courtroom moment where I stood up and pointed at them like in a movie. No, I wanted something much simpler. I wanted the truth to matter. I wanted them to feel as I felt, and I wanted power. That's where it began. The concept came slowly, like a guitar riff I couldn't get out of my mind. It began as a notion, then evolved into a plan, then a project, and finally information. People forget that teenagers are constantly observing, listening, and taking notes. And I had spent my entire life doing exactly that. I knew my father. I knew how he thought, how he lied, how he boasted, and how he never examined the minor details because he was too busy exaggerating the major ones. I understood how much he valued appearances, respect, and being the guy everyone looked up to in his circle. I also sensed Alex was weakening, that his golden child facade was crumbling now that I wasn't there to absorb the heat. I still had mutual friends at school, and they told me stuff without realizing they were helping me. Stories of Alex skipping class, getting into fights, and mouthing off at teachers. One student claimed Alex had begun bragging about being able to hack grades and manipulate attendance in the school system. That piqued my interest, so I began asking around slowly and cautiously. It turned out that Alex had gained access to the school system without using hacking tools. Exactly. One of his acquaintances had an older brother who worked in information technology for the district. They'd discovered a backdoor into the school site using a shared admin account and a password written on a sticky note in the lab. Alex had been using it for months, not only to correct grades, but also to eliminate absences and submit bogus assignments. He even included an extracurricular activity on his transcript that did not exist, and no one noticed. That was the beauty of favoritism. Everyone assumed the best about him. I did not tell anyone, not yet, because I wasn't prepared to move. Not until the next piece slipped into place, which occurred roughly 3 weeks later. I was working at the music store when Keith, the owner, pulled me away and handed me a large envelope. "What's this?" I inquired. "Your competition prize," he inquired. "They sent it here since you listed the shop as your primary mailing address. Smart, by the way." I retrieved it. The inside contained a check. $2,500. More what I had imagined. Enough for a new guitar. Perhaps even enough for my used laptop. But I did not spend it. Not yet, because now I had the means and the motivation. There's just one more thing to do. I contacted Tyler that night. We hadn't chatted much lately, simply drifted like people do, but he was still the only one who had witnessed what happened to me in real time. He didn't hesitate when I asked to meet. We bought burgers and sat in his driveway like we were 13 again, talking about nothing until I eased into it. I need a favor, I said. Tyler lifted his eyebrow. What kind of favor? Nothing illegal. Just be quiet. He nodded slowly. I'm listening. I informed him about Alex, the system, the phony grades, and the administrator login. Tyler's eyes widened. Dude, that's a felony. Only if I expose him wrong, I said. I don't want to get anyone arrested. I want the school to know. I want my parents to know. I want it all to crash down, not because I shouted it from the rooftops, but because he did it to himself. Tyler grinned. Okay, I'm in. But how? That's when I revealed the rest of the strategy. We'd gather evidence, not just screenshots, but video and audio. Something impossible to dispute. Something I could drop like a hammer at precisely the perfect time. And the appropriate occasion would be family honors night. It happens every spring. The school held a stupid ceremony for students and parents to recognize academic success and moral virtue. Alex was supposed to get 3 bogus awards, one for academic performance, one for extracurricular leadership, and one for peer mentorship, whatever that meant. Naturally, my folks had planned to go. It was their favorite thing. Parade Alex around like a prize. I wanted that night, but I couldn't simply show there with charges. I needed to structure it like a story. So we began assembling. Tyler pretended to be interested in Alex's methodology. He stated that he sought help with his own grades. He persuaded Alex to ramble, gloat, and describe the entire process again, this time on camera with his phone in his jacket pocket. We have everything, the login information, the fraudulent activity, and even a screenshot of Alex adding a volunteer trip to his record that never occurred. Meanwhile, I approached the competition board for the music scholarship. I told them I wanted to give a portion of my award money anonymously to help support future entries for children in group homes. They loved the concept. They invited me to attend honors night and receive a special plaque in front of the audience. Perfect. Now I had a cause to be present. On the day of the event, I wore a borrowed blazer and stood to the side while Alex and my dad mingled with the staff. My mother spotted me first, her expression altered. Shock followed by reluctance, and then something resembling shame. Ethan, she informed me. I didn't know you were coming. I was invited, I replied simply. Scholarship award. Alex stopped laughing and paused as he noticed me. What are you doing here? I asked, smiling. Oh, I'm just here to support my family. Isn't that what this night is all about? Dad said quietly. Just gave me a once-over and groaned. Typical. The ceremony began. Names were called. Applause echoed. I received my certificate and stepped off stage with a stiff smile. Then it was Alex's turn. They went over his accomplishments, grades, clubs, and mentorship. And as the applause rang out, Tyler snuck into the back row where I stood. He gave me a USB drive. I nodded. Showtime. I approached the principal after the ceremony, right as she was applauding my parents. I smiled politely and explained that I needed to show her something vital about the school's online system. She appeared confused, then concerned. I handed her the drive. Everything's on there, I said. You'll want to look through it carefully. She asked queries. I didn't answer them. Not then. I told her to send me an email if she wanted any clarification. Then I left. 3 days later, I received the note. A formal request for a statement. Alex was being investigated for academic dishonesty. But it was not the finest part. No, the best part came later, when everything I had been working on finally came together. When they found out, the fallout was bigger than I had anticipated. When the principal emailed me requesting a formal statement, I knew the dominoes had finally begun to fall. It did not happen instantly. Nothing in real life ever is. But as soon as I agreed to meet with her and 2 district administrators the next day, I could feel the power dynamic shift. They invited me into a small conference room with a picture of water on the table and notepads in front of each chair. It was calm, professional, and serious enough to make my palms sweat despite the fact that I knew I had done nothing wrong. They played the videos. They posed meaningful, careful questions. They looked at the screenshots. They even identified the hacked admin credentials that Alex had been using. Apparently, a password reset went unreported months ago. When they were finished, one of the district administrators sighed gently and laid the final printed screenshot down as if it weighed 100 pounds. Thank you, Ethan, she clarified. This is a very significant breach. And the fact that a student has been using administrator access to alter academic records is extraordinarily serious. I didn't make a scene. I did not smile. I just nodded. When will you tell him I inquired? We'll notify him and his parents today, the principal explained. And his teachers and possibly the board depending on what else we find. What about the other students, I inquired, the ones he helped change grades for? That depends on the extent of the manipulation, she told me. We have to audit everything. But Ethan, you did the right thing. The right thing. People use those phrases so casually. But hearing them from someone other than my family, someone who had no reason to lie and no hidden motivation, impacted me harder than I anticipated. I left the meeting knowing that the fuse had been lighted, and all I had to do now was sit back and observe. The explosion occurred 3 days later. My phone rang while I was re-ringing a customer's guitar behind the counter at the music shop. It was Mom, not a text or message, but a phone call. I hesitated before picking up. "Hello, Ethan." Her voice sounded faint and strained. "Can you come home, please? We need to talk." I didn't answer yes or no. I simply stated I would think about it and hung up. Tyler stormed through the shop door 10 minutes later, breathless as if he had just ran across town. "Dude, you need to hear this." He told me everything. How Alex was dragged out of class, how Dad arrived to school in a rage, how the principal had arranged everything. Every grade was revised, each forged entry, every made-up volunteer hour. How Alex attempted to lie, sobbed, and then lied again. Then he accused me, then the IT kid, and finally claimed that his phone had been hacked. But this time nothing worked. They had recordings, screenshots, dates, and IP records. Everything was secure. Alex was suspended pending a complete board review. His college hopes are gone. His peer mentor award was revoked. His reputation is shattered. Tyler reported, "My father is pacing the hallway like a caged animal, ranting about conspiracies and vendettas until a district officer ordered him to walk outside or be removed out." She cried. My mother said, but not in anger. Tyler's reenactment suggested something heavier, perilously near to regret. Later that evening, following my shift, I decided to leave. Not for them, for me. I needed to see the impact for myself, not out of spite, but to end the chapter completely. To allow my younger self, who was drenched, rejected, and disregarded, to finally see justice without being silenced. When I arrived, the house was in chaos. The living room was a disaster. Papers are everywhere. A crumpled letter from the school board rested on the coffee table. Dad was sitting in his chair, head in his hands and breathing heavily. Alex reclined on the couch with a blotchy and red face and swollen eyes. He wasn't crying anymore. He was empty. He appeared hollow, as if someone had ripped all of his swagger and confidence away, leaving nothing but a scared child. Mom saw me first. "Ethan," she muttered. "Thank you for coming." Dad glanced up at me with a mix of fury and something he wasn't used to feeling, uncertainty. Alex did not look up at all. I locked the door behind me and walked into the room as if I weren't the same 16-year-old they had thrown out into the rain. Mom drew a hesitant breath. "We know everything. The school showed us the evidence. They said you provided it," Dad snapped. "So you've been planning this for months?" I didn't respond. "No, I've been living my life. He's the one who forged grades, made up activities, manipulated a school system, and bragged about it to his friends." Dad stood. "You wanted to ruin your brother." "No," I said quietly. "He ruined himself. I just stopped covering the damage." Alex eventually looked up, eyes blazing and jaw shaking. "You set me up," he muttered. "No, you set me up for years," I responded. All I did was tell the truth to people who actually listened. The room was extremely silent. I could hear the refrigerator hum in the kitchen. Mom cleaned her face. "Ethan, why didn't you come to us? Why didn't you give us a chance to fix this?" I laughed gently, not because I was amused, but out of astonishment. I tried for years. I told you about the small things, the lies, the favoritism. You always told me to be the bigger person. You always told me not to cause trouble. And then you watched Dad kick me out in the rain because of something he made up. And when the school stepped in, you both treated me like a problem instead of a son. Mom flinched. Dad clutched his fists. Alex seemed to want to disappear. I proceeded with a steady, controlled voice that was almost gentle. "I didn't come here to fight. I didn't come here to watch you unravel either. I came because I needed you to hear this once clearly and without interruption." I let out a rasp. "I'm done." Dad scoffed. "What does that even mean?" "It means I claimed. You don't get to have power over me anymore. I'm building my own life. I have a job, a place to live, people who support me. I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to close the door you slammed on me when I was 16. Mom stepped forward. "So that's it. We lose you. You lost me the night I begged to come inside and no one opened the door. I said tonight isn't about loss. It's about understanding." Alex finally spoke again, his voice quiet. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I studied him. Maybe he intended it. Perhaps he didn't. But it didn't matter because I wasn't the one who needed his apologies anymore." "I hope," I replied softly, "you learned something from all this. Not because you got caught, but because you finally felt what it's like to face the consequences you've been handing me for years." He looked away. Mom cried again. Dad was silent because he was angry, ashamed, or both. It did not matter. I took a step toward the door. Mom muttered, "Will we ever see you again?" "Maybe," I replied honestly. "But not like this, not with me begging for space or fairness. If you want to be part of my life someday, you'll have to walk toward me. I'm done walking alone." With that, I left. There was no dramatic smash or final scream, just a quiet click of the door behind me as I stepped out into the cool night air. The group home was waiting. My guitar was waiting. My future, which I had created with my own hands, was waiting. And for the first time, the weight on my chest had vanished, completely gone. As I strolled down the street past the house that I no longer feared, I realized something significant. Revenge was not about destroying another person's life. It was about recovering your own. And I'd finally finished it. I never looked back, because sometimes the biggest victory is simply walking away and living a life you never thought possible.